So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to just do a brief introduction. Patrick, I know you don't like a lot of nice things said about you in front of you anyway, but I'm going to just mention that you've been town manager for the past 8 years.
Just up 9.
Is it 9 now?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was trying to figure out the timeline. So 9 years. And through that time, you've witnessed some rapid growth. And as I was thinking about that, it hasn't only been residential growth, but commercial growth, infrastructure growth. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as we move on. But one of the things that I wanted everybody to know is that you are well respected nationally for your innovation, introduction of municipal digital communications with its citizens and businesses, and your focus on community planning that's looking forward to ensure that we are successful. And so we appreciate all that innovation and things that you've brought to the table.
Thank you, Kathy.
So today we're going to talk about the Town of Gilbert's plan to reopen after, as we are phasing into reopening nationally due to COVID-19 crisis. But talking a little bit about the level of services today, what we can expect in the future, what businesses can anticipate with this reopening. And then we want to kind of round it out into, what impact has all of this had on our focus on City for the Future, which I know you've been a leader in that as well nationally, and we're going to be the leader here in Gilbert, I have no doubt. So why don't we go ahead? I'm just going to throw out a question and we can go from there. And if I miss the Q&A, Sarah's going to chime in and make sure we don't forget to do that. But so COVID-19 has really had a chilling effect, not only nationally, but here locally as well. And not only for businesses, but families and employees, and I think what people may not realize is that municipalities have been impacted by that as well. We probably haven't thought that far down the process of what that means. So can you talk a little bit about the Town of Gilbert and what that impact has been?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Kathy, and you're absolutely correct. So like any business, continuity of operations is absolutely paramount in where our focus is. And for a municipality, even more so because of the critical nature of some of the services we deliver: police protection, fire protection, water treatment, wastewater treatment, solid waste collection. Those services have to continue uninterrupted and continue with a very high level of quality. And unlike, take any type of business classification, a grocery store or a gas station, if the COVID-19 virus were to hit your workforce and shut you down or shut that location down, there are other gas stations that you can patronize or other grocery stores you can go to. If it should hit the Town of Gilbert and hit our critical workforce, it's not that simple. I can't take someone from another line of service and put them into a water treatment plant, because those are highly technical positions requiring certifications from the state that have to be updated regularly. So it's critically important that the continuity of those operations, we do everything in our power to ensure that they don't go down. So when you make, one of the most important phone calls of your life to 911, that first responders get there and timely and with the quality needed for the situation. And so that's been where a lot of our focus is through COVID-19, and as well as keeping our economy moving. We all know that it's had some pretty severe impacts on certain sectors of our economy, but there's virtually no sector that's completely untouched by it, whether it's supply chain issues or transportation related issues. And so everything we can do to keep business moving along through development services, for permits, so construction projects can start and we can do inspections on those projects so they can work towards that certificate of occupancy and getting open, or our economic development team and continuing to work with employers that do have needs for expansions or relocations. So keep our economy moving and everything we can do to that extent. For our workforce itself, and getting back to the question of impact, we're able to deploy a lot of our workforce remotely, so get them out of their workstations and their offices and get them into home offices, and a lot of really disruptive, innovative thinking that took place to continue services and keep them moving along. Things like virtual inspections from our inspection crews with construction sites and a lot of things that have worked out so well. We will be continuing those into the future because of some of the efficiencies we've picked up with it. And then for personnel that are in the field, police officers, firefighters, and solid waste drivers, whatever PPE, personal protective equipment that we can get our hands on and mitigate that exposure to them has been an area of real focus. And then lastly, revenue impacts. And well, we got our revenues in for March, and I don't know that those were the best indicator because COVID-19 really didn't impact our community until about mid-March. And then there was a lot of, I think, panic buying, stocking up on supplies. So we did get our revenues in for March. They actually came in over March of last year. So we saw an increase, which was great. We expect to get April's in the next several weeks. I think that'll be a much clearer picture for us on revenue impacts to the town. We did receive an early receipt from April of about $4 million, which is about half of the anticipated revenues that we had for the month of April. So we remain hopeful that that impact to our community will be lesser than what we're seeing or what other communities will see around this nation. But revenue impacts and the ability to continue to pay for critical services is a big area of focus for us.
Yeah. Well, I have to congratulate you because I have not heard the town of Gilbert's missed a beat when it came to providing services. And in addition to that, you put in additional resources so that people could reach out. I know in some of our weekly calls, we talked about if you're having a problem, if you're not able to reach somebody, there were other numbers for them to call to make sure that they were the problem was taken care of or the question was answered, and I really appreciate that.
No, thank you, Kathy. I think our workforce has just done an exceptional job during this period in time.
You know, we noticed here at the chamber and with the businesses in the community that March 15th date, it's like everything just came to a standstill. Like we could never imagine, and it is probably indicative in some of those revenue reports that you're receiving that, you know, we were on a trajectory to have the best year ever in our community, right? And so you see that in those numbers, and then that uncertainty of what's happening in the future. And so I'm glad we're keeping a close eye on those numbers and continuing the services to the best of our abilities. And so I wanted to transition a little bit into, now that we're reopening, I believe you're going to do a phased-in approach about bringing employees back, but right. You talked a little bit about some of the innovative ideas. We're seeing that in the chamber as well. These things that we've talked about for years that we've just put off because we're so busy are now becoming a reality. And the silver lining is I think we're going to be better at what we do because of it. Do you want to talk about some of those things?
Yeah, Kathy, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think we're seeing more and more articles come out nationally with major corporations that have realized the same thing. And this pandemic, while extremely impactful to lives and businesses and in our economy, and has really been a painful thing for us, it was also a catalyst for change, and change because we had to. If we were going to continue to deliver critical services, and we needed to also mitigate exposure to our workforce, which meant that we had to take certain measures that take some of the old traditional ways of doing things and tools away from us. It forced us to disrupt our thinking about how we need to do something like virtual inspections. And now our challenge is to not innovate and disrupt because we have to, but because we can, and it's the right thing to do. And we've proven that we can do it and do it well, because as I mentioned, virtual inspections, we've got inspectors now that are never stepping foot in a car or on a job site to do the inspections. And we're doing some studies and quantifying what those savings are. But if you think about, probably a third of the average inspector's day is taken with travel time from job site to job site. And now he can just sit in front of some pretty large monitors, granted, and he can do those inspections, or she can, virtually. And now they can do a third more inspections per day because all of that travel time has been eliminated from that process. And we're seeing that across the organization. And so we're talking about that. I've told them this is our line in the sand. We're not going backwards from this. In fact, we're going forward. So start putting together plans of actions on how we're going to enhance and increase the number of virtual inspections, how we're going to eliminate a single piece of paper being needed in this organization for any process going forward, because we're doing it right now.
Yeah, it's exciting, really, when you think about it. And, you know, people don't always think about by not having them driving, that saves you cost on vehicles, on gas, and on workers' comp type savings as well. So, and, you know, from our perspective, it saves time for businesses, and it gets them open quicker and addresses their problems or their issues quicker, and that's good. It's good for the economy.
It absolutely is, Kathy. And I will tell you, I think that, I know I always have been, and the people that I work with at the town, we are very proud to serve the businesses in this community and our residents. And I don't know that it's ever been more clear than it is right now what our purpose is, and it's to serve them. And it's really helped. I don't know if, you know, from time to time, it kind of refreshes your vision in that way that, you know, we're here to serve this community, and we need to do it to the best of our abilities.
Yeah, there is that silver lining. I think that we are going to be much more thankful for what we have in this community and the services that we all provide. And, you know, just taking a step back and being thankful, I think, is a good thing. And so we appreciate the hard work of all the employees at the Town of Gilbert, and we're seeing success, and congratulations on that. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, talk about money a little bit. And a lot of people may not know that the federal government has dollars allocated for municipalities to help them through this process of reopening and growing their economies. And from what I understand, if you had more than 500,000 in population, the federal government sent the money directly to you as a city. But in our case, at 250,000+, the money went directly to the state. And at this time, that money hasn't been distributed. So I'm curious about kind of the status of that. And also, if we did receive that money, what would we be using that money for?
Great. So great question, Kathy. And yes, the initial program identified direct contributions to cities over 500,000 in population locally. That's Mesa and Phoenix. I think Mesa got about $90 million and Phoenix got about 260 some odd $million, and then everybody else got nothing, which was a little perplexing and a little frustrating, to say the least. There was just a press conference the governor held today about starting to allocate some of the $1.8 billion that the state received to distribute to cities that did not receive a direct allocation. It's our understanding Gilbert will be eligible for about 29.2 million of that amount. And again, my understanding, I couldn't make the conference call. It's my understanding that it's based on population. The governor did put some criteria to the use of the money, that it could only be used for police, fire, EMS, and dispatch 911 operations or projects. And so we're going to go back, and we certainly have a lot of things in that space. We're going to look at those projects and those opportunities and then bring them forward for the council consideration on how we use those dollars. But that just occurred today, and that is my understanding at this point in time of the amounts and how they have to be used.
It's my understanding that the governor is in charge of allocating that money.
Is.
And probably consistently amongst the municipalities. So
yeah, he is. That's my understanding as well, Kathy.
Okay. Well, it'll be nice to see some of those dollars and how that'll impact Gilbert, and it may free up some dollars other ways as well. And of course, police, fire, and these essential services, we want to make sure that they are prepared for anything in the future as well. As the town starts phasing in reopening, businesses are doing that as well. And in the past, you know, the chamber and the town, we've done a lot of partnerships together to help businesses be successful. And most recently, you know, our weekly calls and our sharing of resources for businesses. Just wondering if with all this reopening opportunities, do you foresee anything, that maybe we can work on together in the future?
Yeah, absolutely, Kathy. So we are in the process. We've started the reopening of our Parks and Rec programs, which was the area that were impacted the soonest because of the need to limit crowd sizes and that. So we've already begun that reopening of our pools and our facilities with some restrictions on class sizes and to make sure we adhere to physical distancing standards. And beginning next Monday, we'll have opened the remaining town facilities, Muni 1, Muni 2, to the public. The only one that will continue to stay closed is our senior center right now because of the vulnerability of that demographic. But we'll have the rest of them open. We're going to continue to use remote working to mitigate exposure to staff until we're certain we're through this. And again, a lot of that comes from direction from our governor, as well as state ADHS and CDC. But for our business community, and with the governor's new executive order allowing for the reopening of our businesses, I think one of the most important things we can do for them is to help create approaches that people feel safe to return to establishments, because I think that's going to be the biggest challenge and the biggest limiting factor right now is the businesses that have to deal with physical distancing requirements and that for people's safety. But even when they do that, will people feel safe enough to return to that establishment? And anything we can do to build awareness for our community that it is safe to patronize Gilbert businesses, that they're all taking appropriate steps and actions, so that if you go to eat at a restaurant in the Heritage District or Santan Mall or wherever it may be, that it's a clean environment and a safe environment for you to do so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know consumer confidence is probably a major concern for us and our businesses and the town as well. And anything we can work to do together to increase that confidence, make sure that our businesses have the resources they need to open in a safe and friendly environment at the same time. We still want that to be part of who Gilbert is, of course. And I think that sharing that message of how important it is to shop locally. Every business in this community is important, and they not only the jobs they provide, but the tax dollars that they provide back to the town of Gilbert to provide those services. And so keeping our dollars here in Gilbert is important. And I look forward to us, working together on that. So we have a question. I don't know if you pulled up the Q&A there, but so this says, Patrick, so it's for you. How are you assessing the entire workforce other than inspections? Most of the town works Monday through Thursday. Could this idea of a virtual workforce also be cost savings for building expenses?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And actually, just prior to this call, I was on another video conference call, and we were talking about just that subject. As we all know, Gilbert is continuing to grow, and a lot of projections have us topping out about 330,000 people, and we're at 260 right now. So we've probably got about 70,000 people add to this community, and town, the workforce size will have to grow accordingly to maintain service level, quality, and everything else. And with the use of remote working, and so don't hold me to this, Kathy, but my intention is to never have to spend money on expansion of another town facility for personnel that can also utilize remote working as one of the tools in the toolkit, because space isn't cheap to maintain or to build. There are certain things like in police and fire and people that are out in the field that need certain space, and there's no way around that. But for everybody else, we should use this as a cost containment strategy so that we don't have to continue to expand municipal facilities. It is something that we're finding that our workforce has gained a lot of efficiencies on. I gave the instance of virtual inspections, but that's only one area where we've found that by working virtually, almost kind of a work anywhere kind of mindset, that we can lower sick time usage and leave usage and the cost to overtime, even during a typical flu season. If an employee comes to work and works sick and they give it to 3 coworkers who then have to use sick time, projects fall behind, things get delayed, we incur overtime costs. This is actually a really effective tool for efficiency and cost containment. And we're working on those strategies right now, but you'll see a lot more of it. And you know, the bottom line is, and it's a different way of working, the bottom line is anybody, regardless of what your work is, we measure your effectiveness by your outcomes, whatever metrics, whatever goals that is established for you, whether you're a meter reading technician going out into the neighborhoods, you know, taking the meter readings, or you are someone in the accounts payable office, you know, making sure that we get vendors paid and paid accurately and timely. We evaluate your performance by your output, and you don't have to look over someone's shoulder to do that. It's strictly a function of whatever goals and metrics we have for that position. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that, because we believe it could return tremendous value to this community.
Yeah, that, you know, one of the things I've been kind of contemplating through this whole crisis is that, you know, business is going to change. And again, it's things we've talked about, things we've thought about, but have never been put in a position to really, you know, pull the trigger on it. And I really do anticipate that a lot of us will be looking at more at-home working, especially like you say, if someone's not feeling good, it's better, they can probably still function, but stay at home and don't be sharing the flu, right, that we do every year because we got things going on. And I think that it'll be interesting to see the outcome on commercial building space in the future. You know, are these models going to be changing, and what does that really look like? And we'll be looking forward to your example, because even though you would be considered, well, our largest employer almost at this point, right? I think you are. The tactics that you'll be using as you move forward are great examples for businesses to evaluate it as they look at their own businesses. And so I'll look forward to sharing that in the future. But I appreciate that question. And I think another thing I believe what it emphasizes is the town of Gilbert is always looking at ways to save money and to provide quality, efficient services. And I don't foresee that changing in the future. But at the same time, we know there is a cost to providing services, and we have to acknowledge that.
Yep, and do anything we can, employ any measure, any tool to keep a lid on costs, and you know, to fight back against inflationary pressures. You know, one thing, Kathy, that I think we'll also see, I've been here almost 9 years now, and we've long talked about the amount of commercial space we've got and maximizing the potential of that space and job creation, and we'll continue to do that. I do think this will have a profound impact on commercial space, and not that we'll see it go away, but we're going to look at buildings differently than we do today. I think we're going to look at them as places for engagement, and not necessarily just every single worker has to be housed within those 4 walls, but the types of uses and meetings and the people that do work in there more than they work out of their home is because of engagement and need for engagement. But one benefit I also see to the town of Gilbert, and we know that we are a net exporter of jobs every day going to other parts of the region for employment. And as private sector employers start using this tool in the same way because they're seeing the same things, we will have people that were leaving Gilbert every day to go to downtown Phoenix or go to somewhere else that actually now are going to work out of their home, which will be a great benefit to Gilbert businesses, because when they do go out on a lunch hour to shop, to have lunch, for daycare, all that economic activity is going to happen in Gilbert, Arizona now, not somewhere else. So I actually think that we're going to see a profound impact, our businesses and our community in general, from remote workers. And anything we can do from an infrastructure standpoint, whether it's a robust fiber optic network for ISP service in our town, anything we can do to help encourage that, we're going to benefit greatly from.
And we're gonna, as a region, benefit from the air quality too, if people aren't driving all the way downtown Phoenix or other communities. So as we keep talking, there's more and more benefits that are gonna come out of this. We just gotta weather this storm and hopefully it'll be over soon.
Yeah.
I have another question for you.
Okay.
So Patrick, has the redevelopment study of the Northwest Corridor been impacted by COVID-19?
Great question. It has not. In fact, I know there's a draft copy of it right now that they are in the process of finalizing. And then for the upcoming fiscal year budget, our intention is we built a budget that's responsive, Kathy, to what we believe the needs of the community are for next year, because we are continuing to grow by leaps and bounds. And we also, as we talked about just a few minutes ago, we've got to be fiscally responsible, which we always are, and sensitive to the impacts that we may see. So we have created some triggers within our budget to make sure we don't spend money until we know that the revenues are going to be there and that they're sustainable. But in that budget, we do have some dollars allocated for some efforts to then take this study that we spent this last 12 months doing and now start operationalizing that and taking actions on that to make sure that the Fiesta Tech area, the Northwest Corridor, stays a very strong, viable business location for us.
Great. So appreciate the audience member for that question. So I don't see any more questions right now. So I wanted to change topics again and talk about City of the Future and what is that, you know, just kind of in a nutshell. And then do you feel like COVID-19 has hindered that, or do you feel like it's really opened up new opportunities to evaluate that City of the Future?
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. And I know that's what we were originally going to talk about today. And I would love to spend more time talking about that, because I think it's the most important thing we can spend our time on as we work towards the build out of Gilbert. And, you know, in a nutshell, it's a basic understanding of the life cycle of American cities and how they've fared. And Gilbert, Arizona traces its roots in the same manner that most suburban communities do to an urban core, in that we were small agriculturally based communities for the majority of our lifespan up to this point, no different than Chandler or Tempe or Mesa, all agricultural communities, farm towns, so to speak, to serve an agrarian population. And we trace our roots back to post-World War II expansion of cheap gas, cheap automobiles, this new American dream of the white picket fence on a cul-de-sac lot with a backyard. And we started throwing up subdivisions and schools and retail centers, commercial centers. And we didn't really have a good handle on that life cycle and what happens when your community is built out, and is it resilient? Does it continue to thrive? Or are there factors at play, whether it be deferred maintenance on infrastructure or changing demographics, that workforce population that made the Deloittes of the world possible are now retirees, and now Deloitte is struggling to have a workforce to maintain a viable base of operations in Gilbert, or do they have to move? To understand all of those variables to the greatest extent possible so that we make decisions today that set this community up for sustainability and resiliency, so that our children have the same opportunity to enjoy the same quality of life that we do today. And so those are really the driving factors, Kathy, and I don't know that I could sum it up better than creating competitive demand for what we have in Gilbert. And it's very similar to what a business does, to a successful business does. If people continue to demand the products that Apple has, Apple, as long as they manage all their other affairs well, you know, fiscal responsibility and supply chain and whatnot, they'll be put in a position to where they'll have a greater chance and likelihood of long-term sustainability. If people no longer demand what Apple has, that they'll fall to a different fate. Same goes for Gilbert. We have built an amazing quality of life in Gilbert, Arizona, and it's been done over generations of leaders and staff and business owners and just individuals within our community that have put us into a place where I think we really enjoy a quality of life that is second to none. And people demand what we have in Gilbert, and it's what's driving property values. It's what's driving employers who want access to that workforce that exists here. There's demand for Gilbert, Arizona, and our schools are a critical piece of that. It's about making sure there's demand for Gilbert, Arizona long past build out, which is projected to be in 2030, and making sure we understand those changing population demographics and how do we still have a strong workforce in this community to maintain viability for employers like Deloitte. How do we maintain a strong healthcare system, a strong school system? How do we continue to create demand for this community that then drives investment and all those other factors that are quality of life items? And so COVID-19, I think that, and again, there is an opportunity for so many lessons to be learned here. We talked about a couple just on this call, but it's a great opportunity for us to better understand and pivot and maximize, that value potential to our community, like with remote workers and getting more remote work in our community, and those kinds of things. So it certainly distracted us for the time being as we take steps to, again, continuity of operation, mitigate exposure to our workforce, understand our revenue streams, but only that. If anything, it's going to help us sharpen our focus to an even greater degree to meet that long-term sustainability goal.
And I know you and I have talked about it in the past, and you've been able to do a lot of research on communities that hit their boom years and then declined very rapidly because they took their eye off the ball. They got very complacent and comfortable in what they, who they were. And then something happened, and it could be as simple as a large employer left town and it just started diminishing after that. And I think that by us taking that forward look at what keeps us competitive, what keeps us such a quality community, it also translates into not just innovation. So it's not just about the latest technology, but it is ensuring that our infrastructure is maintained and replaced on a timely basis. It's making sure our services are still quality and we're meeting the residents and the businesses' needs. And it's not a check the box and you're done. This is a long-term commitment on your behalf.
Absolutely, Kathy, and it's going to take long-term vigilance, because there are things that we need to try and then we need to measure and see if it moved the needle in the direction that we thought it would. And if it doesn't, we need to immediately pivot from that and try something else and just evaluate what's happening, what we're seeing, how's our infrastructure doing, how are our schools, how are our healthcare providers, how's our commercial business community. And when we start to see signs of stress and distress, try to deal with those in that moment of time instead of kicking the can down the road, because no one wants to spend money to maintain existing infrastructure. We always like shiny new things as humans, but it's critically important that we maintain our infrastructure now, because it's going to improve the life of that asset, the quality of that asset over its life, and make the eventual replacement costs cheaper than they would have been. And if you think about this community and the sheer size of it, if you had to replace the over 2,000 miles, and that's center lane miles of road in Gilbert, you're talking billions of dollars, and there is no one there. I've yet to work with a politician that wants to put a $1 billion ballot measure on the ballot to address infrastructure problems that built up over a period of 30 years. We've got to take that off in chunks and address it at the point in time when we see it happening, or if we see a business district starting to show some signs of age. Spend money and extend efforts at that moment in time when we can change that trajectory, and not let it reach a point where it's in such a state of despair that it's really starting to impact all the other aspects of our community.
And I don't know if everybody who's listening knows that you all did a complete inventory of all of our infrastructure, and you have developed a program that talks about when replacement should happen, maintenance should happen, and this is going to allow us to manage the expenses of that over time, and instead of being like, you just mentioned, last minute. I like to tell people when that last house is built, there's a big old check to be paid if we didn't do the right thing along the way. So it's not, it's key not to be waiting to the last moment to address that.
We did, Kathy, and there's a scenario that we like to use to help put into perspective for people. So we did, over the last 9 years, we have been doing a complete inventory of every piece of infrastructure and asset we have in the town. Things as small as a street sign all the way up to a water treatment plant. And to get a full accounting of what we have, when it was built, at what cost, what's the expected life expectancy of it, what maintenance plans exist, so that we don't wake up one day to the realization that we've got billions of dollars in unfunded deferred maintenance mandates. And one thing, a simple thing, a fire hydrant. Right now we've got over 11,000 of them in town. And at build out, we'll probably have about maybe 15,000. Fire hydrants left to their own devices have about a 25-year lifespan, and they cost in today's dollars about $6,700 to buy the new fire hydrant, have it installed. And we found a maintenance program for fire hydrants that if we, every 10 years, opened them up and took the moving gears out of them and did basic maintenance on them at a cost of $500, we could take a fire hydrant that had a life of 25 years and a replacement cost of $6,700 and make that same hydrant last 100 years and only spend $500 every 10 years on it. And over that 100-year period of time, that savings to this community is almost $100 million just in fire hydrants. And so they're very similar approaches and mentality across all the asset categories that literally will save this community billions of dollars over the decades by just being smart about maintenance of our infrastructure.
Thank you for that, because I think it's good for people to understand the complexity of what we deal with every day to provide services that we all take for granted, and the efforts that you and your team have gone through to save taxpayer dollars long term, and by investing when we need to invest. So we have another question from the audience. And so I just want to make sure everybody knows to go ahead and type in a question if you have one. This one is the general fund money that would be freed up by the CARES funds for police. Can that be used to help local businesses by way of grants, et cetera?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I don't have the answer to that yet because I have not seen the actual whatever the governor's going to provide to us in writing when we start receiving those checks. And then certainly that's going to be a decision point for the council if how they repurpose dollars and where they go to. But more information will be forthcoming just as soon as we get some of those details.
And it's my understanding that internally you've already been having these discussions about if we got money, what could we do? And while there's a lot of what ifs in that, what I wanted to just mention is that you're prepared to move forward as soon as you know what the rules are. So this isn't one of those things that we've been waiting and now it's going to take us 2 or 3 months to get through a process to figure out what to do.
Right. Yeah, Kelly, what if scenarios have been a big part of our lives here lately. There's a lot of people telling us what to do and how we can do it. And there's a lot of talk about what may be coming down the road. So you're absolutely right. We've been working on and preparing plans for a host of various scenarios, depending on what happens and how we're directed to expend funds.
And so I think if people are interested, they could be watching the town council agendas that are published the Friday before, I believe. And, yes. And then they can watch all of this online. So even if, I've watched it on TV and I've watched it online, and there's a lot of different variables that people can be active in that. And just kind of a reminder that if you are participating online, that you do have the opportunity to ask questions of council throughout this whole process. So none of that public process has gone by the wayside during this. And I think actually we may have been one of the first to introduce this of the communities. I'm not sure, but I just hadn't heard of others. And we got it right after the first one. The first one was a little struggle, but of course, but after that, it seems to be running really smoothly. And congratulations to, I know Valerie's a big piece of that from the mayor's office and clerk's office and everybody for making that work, because that's not an easy process.
No, it is not, and they have done an exceptional job. Yeah.
Great. Well, there's no more questions there, so we're going to move on.
Kathy, there's one question in the chat. Have you been able to gauge the loss of businesses in Gilbert related to current COVID-19 as of yet?
Great question. I have not heard any information in regards to specific Gilbert businesses that have announced that they're closing permanently and not reopening. I could certainly follow up and Kathy, get that information to you, and you could provide that to the participants on the call and your membership. But I have not specifically heard of any Gilbert businesses yet that are not reopening.
And I would say we haven't heard much either. And we've been doing surveys in conjunction with the East Valley Chambers of Commerce Alliance. So we're, surveying each of our members, but we segregate it by community. And I think there's been a lot of wait and see. We probably aren't going to hear about many of them that close until after this month. And if they feel like the stimulus dollars haven't come through or they weren't able to open because of whatever reason, we'll start seeing that. But it'll be interesting to see how we're going to measure that. In the Town of Gilbert's case, you only have to register your business through a business license once a year. So we may not see that. You might be able to start tracking through sales tax collections, but that will only be for those who collect sales tax. So I think it'll be interesting to see how we can capture that data. Our hope is, as I know your hope is, that nobody has to close, that we're able to weather this storm together.
Absolutely. That's our hope as well, Kathy.
So appreciate that question. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the transportation bond election. That's been postponed for a year, and I'm actually supportive of that decision. I think the timing may not be the best to do that, just because of the uncertainty of the voter, and you would prefer to be prepared to have a good election on that. But can you explain, by postponing it a year, are we going to be out of sync on projects, or do you feel that you've managed those for the next year?
Yeah, so great question, Kathy, and certainly, all things considered, it would have been best to have it on this November, but understanding the timing of, we have to get something to the county by our first meeting in June if we are going to have a November ballot item. And we just did not have a comfort around what things were going to look like in our local economy to put a ballot issue on for November, not knowing what November is going to look like. And we did not want to be insensitive to some of the impacts that are occurring to individual families and businesses in our community. The projects are absolutely needed. We have grown by a substantial amount since our last ballot issue in 2007. We've added almost 44% to our population, which is about 80,000 people, and that's why we're seeing longer wait times at our intersections, especially older intersections that weren't really designed to handle the volume of traffic they are today, and the need for new and expanded roads and the Ocotillo Bridge. So they're definitely needed, but we just didn't feel comfortable with where our local economy would be at that point in time, and additional pressure and stress it would put on businesses and individuals from that. So when we sat down and looked through all the projects and what's the real impact of that, at the end of the day, it's about a 6-month impact to the projects based on when we had anticipated issuing bonds to begin the projects versus what that timing looks like with a November 21 ballot initiative, and felt like in weighing everything, and to your point, we really do try to make sure that we are staying on top of everything and delivering quality services and maintaining our infrastructure properly, there is always fiscal sensitivity and responsibility that we bring into that equation. And so about a 6-month impact, and we feel like that's manageable. And our hope is that that the impact isn't as great to our community, and that whatever impact does occur, we will recover from quickly, because it really is going to be critical to put those on the ballot for the following November.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's worth saying that what you're asking for is approval for bonds for the future. It doesn't mean you're going to be spending that money, that's all prioritized, and that goes back to the council every time a bond is going to be issued. And so for years, like you said, we've been working on the 2007 bond approval, and that has been progress over time because of when it was, the need was there. You don't just go out and spend all that money. And
Yes.
The town of Gilbert has earned several AAA bond ratings because of our ability to pay down those bonds quickly and save taxpayers millions of dollars. And
Yeah.
so, we know that you're very thoughtful when you move forward on any asking the voters to approve bonds.
Yeah.
So I have another question from the audience.
Okay.
Have there been any private economic development projects that have either been delayed or canceled?
We had, and I get regular updates from Calamira as our development services director, and right now we are still seeing very strong activity in our pipeline, so hopefully that will continue. There is a lifetime fitness plan for the southern part of Gilbert that's moving forward. From what we understand, they've just put a slight temporary pause on it, but they still intend to move forward with the project. But we have not seen any substantial slowdown or projects put on hold during this period in time.
That's great news.
Yes, very good news.
So Patrick, I know I didn't get this question to you ahead of time, but it's my understanding that the council is going to be evaluating our tax rate in the June 2nd meeting. I've been out of town, so I may be a little behind on my information, but it's my understanding also that the tax rate is going to remain the same. Is that right? And then there'll be conversations about this. This is an annual vote that's taken. It's not anything new or unusual. Can you share any information about that?
Yeah, so the tax rate will remain unchanged from last year, Kathy, at 99 cents. When I got here 9 years ago, it was at $1.15, and over each year we continue to evaluate what do we need to pay down the bonded debt that we have, all that debt being voter approved debt. Sorry, I lost my train of thought real quick. My dog is at my feet, actually licking my leg. The joys of remote work. It will remain unchanged at 99 cents for this coming calendar year. And so any increase that a resident would see in their property tax through the secondary property tax would be because the value of their property has increased in this community from the last time it was assessed.
And it increases because we have such a quality community, and their home values are better. And I know that's always a conversation in the community, but I think it's great to know. I do remember the 115, and I believe it was higher than that in the past. And previous councils have worked really hard to bring that down. But it is an annual exercise that you must go through. And so if people want more information, then it'll be in the packet and they can evaluate all of that. The town, when they provide their council packets online, there is an option where you can receive all of the background information just like the council does. So
yeah, Kathy, again, I can't emphasize enough, we really do try to always bring just a very intense scrutiny to what we spend, how we spend it, the amounts we spend, the amounts we ask for, and find every possible way to contain costs, to find other sources of funding for things, whether it be federal dollars or state dollars. And I think that's why in one of the largest communities in this region, that's still one of the fastest growing communities in this region, we have the lowest combined tax rate of any of them. And so we don't have a primary property tax, only a secondary, and it's lower than every other city in this region around us. And again, I think it's because we're just very smart, making sure we do what needs to be done, but do it in the most financially responsible way possible.
I agree. Congratulations on that. So Sarah, I just want to make sure we don't have a question in the chat room.
No other questions at this time.
Perfect. Well then, Patrick, as we come to a close, we almost did our hour together. I was wondering if we were going to get that far, but it's been a great conversation. Do you have any other insights or any information you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, so we're also going to pass the fiscal year 21 budget next Tuesday, Kathy. And again, I touched on it a little bit. We built that budget to be responsive to what we believe the needs of this community are next year. With the COVID-19, we did build some triggers in there in the budget so that we make sure that we don't spend dollars that we're not going to have. And so we're always very conservative in how we estimate our revenues and allocate our expenditures, which has put us we're in a much different place today than we were prior to the Great Recession of 2008 in regards to our reserve funds, repair and replacement funds, and again, just not pushing everything to extremes when it comes to budgeting. So we believe we are very, very well positioned to absorb the impact of what's going to happen through this pandemic. We hope it's as mild as it can be for all of us, and that we rebound from it as quickly as we possibly can. And I fully expect, just like with the Great Recession, Gilbert, there was an analysis done of the 100 largest cities in America and their post-recession performance, and Gilbert was ranked #1 in post-recession performance of any community, any city in the nation. And we feel like we are well positioned to do that again because we're in even stronger financial shape than we were before. So we just want to make sure that people know that they can have confidence in the local government, that we will continue on with the quality services, and we'll continue to hold the line on costs and be responsible in any way we possibly can.
Perfect, thank you. You know, as we end our time together, I just want to say how much we appreciate here at the Chamber the relationship we have at the town, and we partner a lot on a lot of good things to make this a great community. But we also have a relationship where we can evaluate things and maybe not be on the same page and work together to find the best solution. And I can't stress enough how important that is. That's what makes us a great community, is when we can have frank discussions and maybe not be on the same page, but end up close at the end of the day because it's best for our community. And I anticipate that relationship continuing well into the future. And now all of a sudden people want to ask questions. Let me see what I got here. Let's see. We're going to do this last one, I think, here, if that's okay.
Yep.
So it's for both of us. Do either of you have concerns with attracting businesses that have helped make Gilbert stronger? Deloitte, Isogenics as examples. Given organizations reassessing their need for building needs and how that would impact the future of our community? That was a question.
Okay. You know, Kathy, I don't. Again, I think that we're going to look at buildings and how we use buildings, design buildings. They're really, I think, going to become tools for engagement even more so than they are today. But there will always be a need for commercial office buildings. And I know those two employers, they'll probably, as we have, I know Isogenics is busting at the seams with all of their growth. They'll probably look at remote working or a work anywhere type of approach to help them contain costs around physical space. Deloitte is doing exceptionally well. So no, I don't see the impact there. And I think we'll continue to see additional employers come in. I think we'll just see if an employer under maybe an old approach would need 100,000 square foot for the workforce that they need in this location, they may design a 75,000 square foot building that's really more attunely designed around engagement and utilize flexible work environments. And they may not need as much square footage, but I see those employers continuing to flourish and all of our commercial parks continuing to flourish.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one thing we will probably see is looking at different parking ratios, something you have already started looking at. And I think that the market was already going towards that trend, maybe at a slower pace of creating that engagement area, that gathering space, a different way of working. So I think the market was on a trend, and we'll have to kind of speed up a little bit to figure out what this next wave looks like. But I don't anticipate that that will hurt us at all. And we've got amazing infrastructure and amenities here that will continue to want, those companies will want to expand here. And by having them in our community, it's going to attract more like type industries as well.
I think so as well, Kathy.
Yeah, so it's a great success. Okay, wow, 3 minutes early. We almost did our whole time, so it's amazing. So, you know, thank you for joining us today, Patrick. I know how busy you are. You're on the phone all day long trying to figure this all out and represent our community regionally, nationally. It's always great to talk with you. Please extend our thanks to your staff, because the business community really does appreciate what they're doing and their ability to listen when there is an issue and help us work through it together. And we don't take that lightly, and not every community has that mindset, and we appreciate that. So with that, I think we're going to sign off.